My sister threw me a surprise party, but the real surprise was her announcing she was marrying my fiancé. She smiled and said, "Your ceremony works for me." Then added with a shrug, "Well, good thing you already paid for it." Luke just gave me a wink and said, "Honestly, we just wanted an audience." I didn't say a word. I simply nodded, handed over a small box and murmured, "Open it later." Of course, my little cousin got curious and opened it early. Inside? The deed to the cottage. In my name. Signed and finalized 2 years back. "You're going to love this surprise," Emma squealed, practically shoving me toward the backyard with both hands on my shoulders. "It's your big day after all." The thing is, I hadn't expected a party, not that day, not like that. I was supposed to be finalizing the seating chart with our wedding planner, going back and forth over centerpieces and floral themes, not standing in my mom's backyard while 50 people jumped out yelling, "Surprise," and my sister grinned like she just discovered a cure for cancer. Twinkle lights flickered overhead. Champagne was being poured left and right. All our friends, extended family, even the professional photographer I'd booked for my wedding, everyone was there, taking candid photos. And there was Luke, standing under a flower-covered arch. But something didn't feel right. It was too elaborate, too rehearsed. And he was wearing the exact same suit we'd picked out together for our own ceremony. I turned to Emma, my sister, my supposed best friend, to ask what the hell was going on, but before I could even open my mouth, she snatched the mic from the DJ. "Thank you all for coming," she called out, beaming. "I know some of you were expecting a bridal shower for my sweet sister, but, surprise, it's actually an engagement party." Silence. Tension in the air so thick you could slice it. "For me," she added. I couldn't breathe. My chest clenched. Then she said it. "And I'm marrying Luke." I couldn't hear anything after that, just a rush of noise. I think I heard someone gasp. My legs locked up. Luke stepped forward, all smiles, like this was the happiest day of his life. "Your ceremony works for us," he said with a casual shrug. "Glad you already covered the costs." A few people laughed awkwardly. Emma slid her hand into his. "We just wanted an audience," she added sweetly. That's when everything clicked. They'd planned this whole thing together. The venue date? Stolen. The guest list? Even the food, they served dishes I had paid for. I didn't yell. I didn't break down. I walked straight up to Luke, smiled calmly, and handed him that same wooden box. "Open it later," I whispered, and then I turned and walked away. But curiosity runs deep in kids. My little cousin opened that box about an hour later. Inside was the deed to the lakefront cottage I inherited from Grandma. My name on it. Dated 2 years ago. Signed and sealed. And trust me, that was just the beginning. They say hindsight is 20/20, but when it's the people closest to you who set you up like a trap, even looking back feels like getting slapped twice. Just a week before that awful day, Emma had been hanging out in my apartment like it was hers, barefoot, sipping my wine, acting like nothing was off. She was wearing one of my hoodies. Not borrowed, just taken. That's how it always was with her. Slowly, over time, she'd absorbed pieces of my life like a sponge. "You're so lucky," she said as she casually flipped through my wedding planner. "Luke's such a catch." She smiled, but there was nothing real behind it. Her eyes didn't match her face. Back then, I chalked it up to jealousy. Looking back now, it was a warning sign I completely missed. I was her safety net for years. When she dropped out of art school, I got her a job at my office. When she maxed out her 3rd credit card, I sat down with her and helped her budget. When she broke up with yet another guy, sobbing and broken, I fed her and gave her my couch. I kept giving. And she kept taking. When I got engaged, she cried harder than I did, called them happy tears. She insisted on helping plan everything. "It's your big day," she'd say, gently nudging her way into handling the vendor calls, flower orders, and even touring the venues. And honestly, I let her. I was burned out from work. Grateful for the help. But in hindsight, it wasn't help, it was surveillance. She was casing the place. Like a thief taking inventory. Then about 3 weeks before the party, Luke started acting strange. Not mean or distant, just hard to pin down. When I brought up our tux fitting, he waved it off. Whatever you like, babe. I asked about writing our vows, he dodged the topic. I figured he was just stressed. Weddings are a lot to handle. I didn't want to nag him. Meanwhile, Emma was practically living in my apartment, saying she just loved watching it all come together. One night, she was standing in front of my full-length mirror, twirling in my wedding shoes. Just testing how they photograph, she giggled. You never know with white heels. I laughed along, but something in my stomach turned. Then came the call from the venue. Hi, is this Emma? The woman asked. No, I said, confused. This is her sister. The bride. Silence on the other end. Oh, I'm sorry. We've mostly been working with Emma. I hung up before she could finish. My hands were ice. My heart dropped. I logged into the joint wedding account. It was nearly drained. Over $11,000 gone, marked as event costs. Then I checked Venmo. Luke had sent Emma $500 with the note for the dress. I called him that night. Luke, did you approve a venue change? Silence. Then, Emma handled it. She said you were feeling overwhelmed. My stomach dropped. You gave her full control over our wedding? I asked, trying not to shake. He sighed. She's your sister. She said you signed off. My hands were trembling. My heart was racing. And the money? He just said, we moved a few things around. Don't overreact. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I walked over to my desk, pulled open the file drawer, and took out an envelope labeled Grandma's Cottage deed. It was the one thing Emma always assumed was still in probate. The one thing I never told her was already legally mine. 2 years ago, after Grandma passed, she left her lakeside cottage to me. Emma had been overseas at the time and never came to the funeral. Emma never knew I'd already had the deed notarized, tucked away, and fully paid off in my name. It wasn't something I'd planned to share. Not then any. But after what they pulled, that deed became the first domino to fall. Growing up, Emma was always the one who lit up a room. She had that natural charm, that wild, spontaneous energy everyone gravitated toward. I was the steady one. The one who made plans, checked boxes, held things together. The boring big sister. Funny how the boring one was the one who planned the wedding, paid the deposits, booked the honeymoon, picked out the dress, covered the ring insurance. And just like that, the charming one swiped it all out from under me. But here's what Emma never saw coming, what none of them did. I was done staying quiet. They were going to have their moment, but I was going to flip the script. The backyard looked like something out of a dream. Twinkling string lights, rose petals lining the aisle, and a quartet playing that special song I thought was ours, one I'd picked out 6 months earlier. And there stood Emma beneath the floral arch I had designed, wearing a dress that looked eerily similar to mine, almost identical, down to the seams. Next to her? In the exact suit I helped him pick out. Paid for it. He looked relaxed, even smug. The guests, our mutual friends, extended family, co-workers, sat quietly, all lined up like spectators at a play. Most of them didn't know what was happening. Some did. I could tell by the looks on their faces the moment I walked in. Correction, I didn't just walk in. I arrived, dressed head to toe in black. Long coat, hair slicked back, steady, still, unshaken, not broken anymore, not crying, not confused. I walked right down that aisle like I owned every inch of it, because honestly I did. Gasps rippled through the crowd like someone lit a match in dry grass. Emma's face went white. She loosened her grip on Luke's arm. Luke blinked a few times, then forced a half-hearted smile. Didn't expect to see you here, he said, trying to sound casual. Oh, I replied, stopping just under the arch. I wouldn't miss this. I planned it. Silence dropped over the backyard like a curtain. I turned to the crowd. Thank you all for being here. I know many of you came expecting something else, so let's clear the air, shall we? I drew in a breath. This wedding, the location, the food, the music, even the guest list, was originally mine. Mine and Luke's. Until 1 week ago, when I found out my sister and my fiancé decided it was more convenient to make it their wedding instead. A few people shifted in their seats. Someone whispered, "What the hell?" Emma stepped forward quickly. "This isn't the time," she said, her voice brittle. "We didn't mean for it to happen like this." I raised my hand. "Don't you dare try to play this off like some accident. You forged my name on vendor contracts. You drained our shared wedding account. You pretended to be me to confirm everything. You knew exactly what you were doing." "I loved him," Emma said, her voice cracking. "No," I said, my tone flat. "You loved the thrill of taking what wasn't yours." Luke let out a sigh like he was the one who needed comfort. "Look, we didn't mean to hurt you. We just wanted to be happy." I laughed, a cold, joyless laugh. "No. You wanted attention. You wanted applause. But all you've built is a cheap set. Fake walls. Borrowed flowers. And a lie." Then I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out a slim black box. I held it out to Luke. "Open it later," I said, quiet but firm. "Or don't. Let someone else open it. Doesn't matter. It's yours now." Emma narrowed her eyes. "What's in the box?" I smiled. "Proof." I turned back to the crowd. "My grandmother left me her cottage," I said, raising my voice just enough. "Some of you have even been there, the lake house with the white shutters. Emma always wanted that place. She told people it was still stuck in probate. But it wasn't." I reached into my coat again and pulled out a folded document. "The deed. I've had the title in my name for 2 years. I paid every tax bill. I did the renovations myself. I stayed quiet because, stupidly, I believed family would respect boundaries. Turns out I was wrong." I turned to Emma again. "And as of this morning, the deed's been refiled. Taxes paid. All official. And guess what? You're not welcome there." Another round of gasps. Someone near the back actually clapped before quickly stopping. Emma's hands were trembling now. "You're doing all this just to humiliate me?" "No," I said calmly. "You did that all by yourself. I'm just making sure the credits roll at the right time." Luke had opened the box. He pulled out a framed photo, me and Grandma, standing arm in arm at the cottage, smiling in front of a sold sign. Behind the frame? The deed. Notarized. Dated. Witnessed. His face went pale. "She left it to you," he mumbled. "Yes," I said. "And now it's the one part of my life you'll never be able to touch." Then I turned to my parents. My mom looked devastated. My dad couldn't even meet my eyes. "You knew," I said quietly. "Didn't you?" My mom blinked like I'd slapped her. We thought it was just symbolic. Emma told us you were overwhelmed. We didn't want to get involved." I stepped forward, slow and steady. "You watched your oldest daughter get erased in front of everyone. And you applauded." My dad stood up, angry now. "That's enough. You're turning this into a spectacle." "Oh, Dad," I said, letting out a dry laugh. "This was always a spectacle. I'm just giving it a better ending." That's when Emma finally snapped. She stormed toward me, voice high and raw. "You really think this makes you better than me? Like you're the victim? You always had everything. The grades, the job, the praise." I locked eyes with her. "And you had me. You had my support. My patience. My help. You just didn't want my success. What you really wanted was my place." Luke tried to step in, reaching for her wrist. "Maybe we should just—" "No," I said, holding my ground. "Let them hear it. Let her hear it." I turned to Emma, my voice calm, eerily calm. "You didn't just steal a man," I said. "You stole time. You stole my choices. Trust. And you tossed all of it into the air like party confetti." She opened her mouth to say something, but I was already turning away. I made it to the edge of the lawn before I looked back one final time. "To everyone here," I said, "enjoy the show. Because when this falls apart, and trust me, it will, just remember who drew up the blueprints." Then I stepped into the night. No tears. No dramatic exit. Just silence trailing behind me. Until I heard a tiny voice call out, soft and uncertain. It was my little cousin, the one who still handmade birthday cards for me, even when the rest of the family forgot. "You were the real bride," she whispered. I turned and gave her a small smile. Yes, I said gently. And now, I get to write a whole new story. 2 days. That's how long it took before everything exploded online. One of my old coworkers had filmed part of the confrontation, shaky phone footage, a little blurry, but it caught all of it. Me walking down the aisle in black. Luke opening the box. The gasps. The stillness. The unraveling. The video racked up 300,000 views in under 48 hours. The caption? When your sister steals your fiancé, and you steal the finale. I didn't post it. Didn't comment. Barely even watched it. But I did watch what happened next. Emma's Instagram? Radio silent. Luke deleted his account altogether. By Monday, I was getting calls directly from vendors. The venue, the florist, the caterer, all of them wanted to check if I was still using their services. Apparently, Emma and Luke had arranged alternate payments. Except they hadn't. Those arrangements never existed. And guess who was expected to foot the final bills? Not me. I emailed every last vendor with attachments, copies of my police report, bank statements, screenshots. Identity misuse. Digital impersonation. Oh, and a little bonus. Emma had used my old Gmail invoice format and just swapped out the name. Amateur move. Did I press charges? Nope. Didn't have to. Her life was already coming apart, unraveling thread by thread. The venue blacklisted her. The florist posted a not-so-subtle story on Instagram about liars with champagne smiles. Even the photographer shared a behind-the-scenes silhouette of me walking away, with the caption, "True elegance doesn't make noise, it leaves an echo." I moved out the following week. Not because I had to, I own my place, but because I wanted a clean break. I boxed up the things that still felt like mine, and I left behind the furniture I'd once picked out for two. Let Emma and Luke deal with the ghost of what they stole. My new home? The cottage. That cottage. I moved in solo, brought my books, my dog, my record player. That's it. No apologies. No explanations. Just peace. And for the first time in years, I could actually hear myself think. And you know what hit me? I wasn't sad. I was free. My mornings weren't filled with someone else's meal prep, or checking someone else's calendar, or asking if we should split the groceries. I didn't have to clear half a closet. Didn't have to pretend to like takeout 5 nights a week. Didn't have to water down my joy to keep someone else comfortable. I was rebuilding, not from scratch, but from strength. Emma tried to reach me. 3 phone calls. I didn't pick up. 1 text, "Can we please talk?" I deleted it. Then one evening she showed up, stood outside the gate of the cottage, looking pitiful, like she was the one who got abandoned at the altar. "I didn't mean for it to go that far," she said, eyes wide. I stayed on the porch and stared. "You rehearsed it," I told her. "You were white. You sent out invitations." She started to respond, but I cut her off. "You didn't fall into this, Emma. You jumped. And you thought I'd catch you, like I always did." She blinked at me, stunned. "But I won't," I said, voice soft but firm. "Not this time." Then I turned, walked inside, and locked the door behind me. She hasn't come back since. As for my parents, they tried to mediate. Dad left me a voicemail. "She's your sister. You only get one." I sent him a photo of the invoices she'd forged in my name. He never replied. Mom wrote a long, emotional email, pages of it, about forgiveness and how this wasn't really Emma's fault. I replied with 1 sentence. "If you raise a storm and someone gets wet, that's not the rain's fault." Haven't heard from either of them since. But others reached out. 2 cousins messaged me. One apologized for clapping during the engagement speech. The other sent a bouquet, the kind I had originally chosen for my wedding, and a note that said, "Sending what should have been yours." At work, my boss pulled me aside. Gave me a promotion. Said anyone who can stand up with dignity while the world watches a public disaster probably has what it takes to lead in a crisis. I started therapy. Not because I was broken, because I wanted to build something stronger. Boundaries. Not fences to keep people out, but a framework to protect the parts of me I'd hidden to keep others comfortable. My ambition. My creativity. My peace. I started painting again. Luke used to call it a messy hobby. Said the smell of acrylics gave him a headache. But now my paintings hang on the cottage walls. And they're beautiful. Last week, I met up with an old friend, someone I hadn't seen since college. We laughed for hours, like nothing had changed. Like time hadn't made strangers of us. At the end of the night, he walked me to my car and said, "You know, I always knew you were the strong one." I smiled at him. "I just didn't know how strong," I said. Here's the thing nobody tells you about betrayal. At first, it burns like wildfire, scorching, out of control. But once the smoke clears, you finally get to see who you really are. Not just the sister. Not the planner. Not some shadow lurking in the background. You're the flame. And I'm done being scared of burning. I never got a real apology. Not from Emma. Not from Luke. Not even from my parents who clapped while my future was hijacked in front of everyone. But you know what? I didn't need one. Because I stopped needing anyone's permission to exist. The old me? She would have begged for understanding. She would have sat across a coffee table from Emma, ordered tea, and tried to make peace. She'd have told Luke, "I just want to understand why." That girl? She disappeared with the betrayal. What took her place was someone who doesn't wait for closure. She writes her own ending. It took weeks for the social media storm to die down after the wedding. Everyone had an opinion. Friends, strangers, even coworkers who barely knew me. Some said I was cold. Why humiliate your sister like that? Others called me a hero. You handled it with dignity. Honestly, I didn't care. Because one thing was clear, I was finally living for me. Not for Emma's dismissal. Not for Luke's fragile ego. Not for the family's twisted version of approval. Just me. And when I finally made that choice, I cut the last financial ties. I sold every shared asset I had with Luke, even the ones I paid for myself, just to wash my hands of it all. I turned down every coffee invite Emma sent my way. She even showed up at my new job once, thinking the receptionist wouldn't recognize her. She was wrong. I had her politely escorted out. My parents sent me a long letter, full of guilt and "you misunderstood," and "Emma made mistakes but so did you." I sent it back, unopened, with a sticky note stuck on top. Respect isn't a family heirloom. You don't inherit it, you earn it. I didn't just burn bridges. I built whole new cities. At the cottage I planted things. Like literally. Raised garden beds. A patio swing. A bird feeder I made myself. I even painted one guest room emerald green, bold, unapologetic. Just like me. I started saying yes to things that scared me. Yes to traveling solo. I spent 3 weeks in Portugal. A trip I delayed for years because Luke hated flying. Yes to new friendships. Not based on family or history, but real connections. Yes to me. The me I'd been shelving to keep others comfortable. One cold autumn night, I got a message from a woman I'd never met. Her name was Claire. She'd worked with Emma and had been at the wedding. "I just wanted to say," she wrote, "you weren't just brave, you were right. I saw what they did. And I'm sorry. You inspired me to leave a toxic engagement. Thank you." That message meant more to me than anything my own sister ever said. It reminded me, sometimes fallout isn't destruction. It's direction. The story doesn't end when someone steals your chapter. It begins when you take the pen back. 6 months later, I published my first essay, a memoir piece that went viral. People called it a manifesto for anyone learning to build boundaries. A literary agent reached out. Now I'm working on a book about women who don't just walk away from betrayal, but from the roles they were forced into. I'm not the scorned bride anymore. I'm the woman who turned a stolen wedding into a career pivot. Emma can keep her fairy tale if it even lasts. Luke can keep his recycled promises. I'm not interested in revenge, because success is louder than any apology. And peace? Peace is the loudest silence there is.